Chapter 4870. Jian Wushuang slowly backed away, and the invisible sword had quietly gathered. At the moment, the height of this man is more than several meters tall, like an old man walking out of the black fog. There is no power surging in his body, but the general trend that is emitted does not dare to be underestimated. He also had some understanding. Although this old man did not show up, he might not lose sight of the confrontation with Di Qing, and he might even reach a tie. At this time, Xiao Dejuan stepped forward and stood in front of Jian Wushuang, and said two words in a nervous voice, "Yuan Jun?" "Huh." The black-robed old man stared at Xiao Dejun, a color of doubt flashing in his eyes. "I am young Master Yang," Xiao Dejun added. The black-robed old man's eyes suddenly condensed. "You are Yanzi?" Xiao Dejun breathed a sigh of relief, then smiled bitterly. "It's me. I thought Yuan Jun forgot about the kid." "Good boy. It has become like this since the beginning." The black-robed old man suddenly disappeared before condensing in front of him. His eyes could not stop showing joy. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang also secretly breathed a sigh of relief and put away the invisible sword. Avoiding a battle that will pay a great price, this kind of result is naturally good. Xiao Dejun scratched his head. "The years are too long. If I didn't remember what Yuan Jun you looked like when I was young, I am afraid I will be in trouble today." The old man called Yuan Jun looked up and smiled, and then said, "You don't need to worry about me. You guys, even if you don't remember what I look like, I will always remember your appearance." "The kid understands." Xiao Dejun also smiled. "Well, since you come to see my old bone, then go sit in my hall first," Yuan Jun said with a wave of his sleeves. Xiao Dejun nodded, and immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang shook his head without a trace. A vigilance flashed in his eyes. He smelled a bit of danger from the open hall, and if he rushed in, he might encounter an uncontrollable crisis. "This is..." Yuan Jun cast his gaze towards Jian Wushuang. Xiao Dejun hurriedly added, "This is my best friend, Brother Jian." Yuan Jun nodded. "Since I am a close friend of Boy Yang, I will not expel her for the time being. Let's come in together." After the words, he was in the shape of a fog, drifting towards the hall. Seeing him leave first, Jian Wushuang looked at Xiao Dejun, frowning slightly. "Do you know how much do you know about him and how many things he is hiding from you?" Xiao Dejun was a little dumb, and said after a moment, "Yuan Jun was one of the only elders who followed me closely when I was young. Although he soon explained himself to Xian Yuan, I always knew his care for me. If not, he will not leave the inheritance to me either." As he said, he stretched out his palm and placed it on Jian Wushuang's shoulder. "Brother Jian, believe me once, Yuan Jun will never be malicious to us." Jian Wushuang opened his mouth, but finally did not speak. The two figures immediately entered into the giant hall of the formidable. What he didn't say was actually quite important. If it was Xiao Dejun's words, then Yuan Jun had died of self-understanding of the immortal source, leaving only a trace of obsession. Then the situation now is completely different from what he said. Yuan Jun has no body at all. In other words, his fairy source is very abundant so far, and the figure that appears is not his last obsession, but a truly unbroken fairy body. This is why Jian Wushuang would hesitate. After all, facing a concealed and extremely powerful existence, being vigilant is the correct performance. As soon as he stepped into the giant hall, the dark aura disappeared a lot. The first thing that catches your eyes is the elegant pavilions, not the solemn and cold halls. "Boy Yang, come here and go fishing with the old man." On a vacant pitch-black fairy pavilion, Jun Yuan was sitting on the top of the eaves, holding a fishing rod as a gesture. "Come here," Xiao Dejun answered, and stepped onto the fairy pavilion with Jian Wushuang. After handing him a fishing rod, Yuan Jun looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Boy, do you like fishing?" Jian Wushuang nodded and said, "It's okay. I was addicted for a while when I was killing time." "That's good. It's a good seedling that can calm your mind." After throwing a fishing rod to him, Yuan Jun caught the fish enthusiastically. Xiao Dejuan was sitting in the center and wanted to ask some questions, but he didn't know how to speak, hesitated. It was Yuan Jun who spoke first. "Boy Yang, can Emperor Zhen Wuyang change now?" Xiao Dejun replied, "My father is still the same. After he claimed to have established the Da Siu, he settled down and lived in Heavenly Court." "That's good. His mission is completed, it's time to take a break. Yuan Jun nodded when he heard the words. Go ahead, why do you think of seeing me? That. Xiao Dijun scratched his head awkwardly. I originally wanted to come here to accept the inheritance. When Yuan Jun heard this, he hurriedly looked at him carefully. Boy Yang, is your immortal body better? No, the defect is still there, and I still can't practice. After my father used the secret method to promote me to Yangxian, I can't make any further progress. Little Emperor said. Damn, you belong to the Emperor's bloodline, how could this happen? Yuan Jun frowned. Could it be that there is no chance to change? Yuan Jun, I have accepted it. My father has nothing to do. It looks good now. Xiao Dijun said with a light smile, and the reason why I came is not for myself, but for Brother Jian accept the inheritance of Yuan Jun. Upon hearing this, Yuan Jun looked at Jian Wushuang again. For him? Yes, I'm just an immortal who can't practice. Without the protection of Brother Jian, I would have fallen through assassinations. As he said, he listened to Yuan Jun about the intricate relationship between the emperors. In the end, he said quietly, in our generation, we'll only stop fighting by killing. Yuan Jun was silent, stretched out his hand and patted Xiao Dijun's shoulder lightly. I have suffered you. But, my heritage is gone. Xiao Dijun didn't understand his meaning, his eyes were puzzled. If you came to accept my inheritance after I destroyed Xianyuan in the first place, then you can see it naturally, but everything has changed right now, Yuan Jun sighed. Despite everything that happened, even me unexplainable, but it actually happened. Jian Wushuang also pricked his ears at this moment. He knew that Lord Yuan was about to reveal the real secrets. The so-called Xianxian and even Dianxian are nothing more than the word Xianyuan in the end. Xianyuan is the true root, and it is complementary to the roots of the immortal. It is the most important thing for the development of immortals. The fragmentation of the source of immortality means complete fall. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4871. Yuan Jun paused when he said that, and slowly stretched out his left palm, and a ray of pure strength was condensed. After Emperor Zhen Wuyang established the Daci territory, the conquests and killings stopped, which made me feel bored. I destroyed the source of immortality and only wanted long sleep. Whether it is the external force destroying the Xianyuan or self-destroying the Xianyuan, it is an irreversible wound. I successfully broke the Xianyuan, and naturally I will fall irreversibly. My self-destruction was very thorough. Apart from leaving a legacy for you, I didn't even leave a point for obsession, so my spiritual consciousness also withered and fell into emptiness. But my fall seems to be a little different. Although my divine consciousness is withered, it seems to be tirelessly awakened by some power. It's just that I don't know how many Chinese years have passed. The original shattered divine consciousness recovered. I woke up, and at the same time, I was surprised to find that even Xianyuan had condensed again. After that, I fully recovered, but because I was tired of the great world, I simply stayed here until I see you again today. The voice stopped abruptly at this point. The amount of information contained in such a remark is not much, but the mystery is at the extreme. Even Jian Wushuang is a little confused. Self-destroying the source of immortality, immortal body, this is an irreversible trauma. Xiu said that it is an ordinary Dian immortal. Even with the truth of the 9 true lives, I dare not play like this. Except for Jian Wushuang, who had no source of immortality and possessed an immortal body, he dared to give it a try. Moreover, it is obvious that the 2 special cases do not exist for Yuan Jun, and the resurrection of the resurrection naturally seems a little confusing. A sense of loss flashed in the depths of Xiao Dijun's eyes, but he smiled. It seems that you are the Yuan Jun who is inexhaustible fortune. To live this time again, you should stop doing stupid things and pursue a higher realm. Yuan Jun smiled and nodded. Listen to you, since my luck is inexhaustible, the old man will go after the great road. After chatting for a long time, the little emperor was about to leave. Boy Yang, I can't leave this place yet, but if you have a big crisis, I will definitely come to help. Yuan Jun said solemnly. Little emperor nodded. Okay, if there is such a day then, the kid will definitely come to invite Yuan Jun. The security of a 9th-rank Dian immortal is extremely heavy. Jian Wushuang also understood at this moment that Emperor Zhen Wuyang had arranged several Dian immortals beside each emperor. There is a black-robed Dian immortal under the fallen young master Mo seat, and at the same time there is a true meaning. There is also a 9th-rank Dian immortal Chengfu next to Gongzijiao. And there is a Yuan Jun beside Xiaodijun. Then, the other emperors must also be accompanied by Dian immortals, and once a war starts with each other, it would be extremely tragic. After speaking, the two of them were ready to leave. But at this moment, Yuan Jun suddenly called Jian Wushuang. "That kid, did you leave in such a hurry?" Jian Wushuang stopped, with some doubts in his eyes. "Although my inheritance has disappeared, this does not hinder my hand-to-hand inheritance," Yuan Jun said proudly after throwing away the fishing rod in his hand. "I also have a good eye for you, so just stay and let me teach it." Xiaodijun heard the words, and a touch of surprise appeared in his eyes. "Brother Jian, thank Yuan Jun soon." Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang shook his head. "Forget it, senior. Although inheritance can be greatly changed in a very short time, it will also have some drawbacks. I still feel it myself." "You look down on the old man?" Yuan Jun's voice condensed, and he danced without wind in a black robe. "Since you are a good friend of Boy Yang, then I will do my best to cultivate you. You must agree or disagree, and if you disagree, you must agree. That's it." After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and grabbed Jian Wushuang without any defense directly to a dojo. Xiaodijun was excited with his boxing palm, as if he was more happy than he got the inheritance. On the vast dojo, like a chessboard, Jian Wushuang's figure stood still, and he had obviously accepted the reality. On the opposite side of him, Yuan Jun stood with his hand holding his hand, full of a sense of stubbornness. "Boy, let me ask you, how long have you been in the realm of immortality?" Jian Wushuang raised his brows. From divine power universe to Dianhuan, he reached the top of the ancestor level and became the eternal god, and now he has become an immortal. It took less than tens of thousands of years. Thousands of years, when replaced by the Taoist supremes in the divine power universe, they are just a few sessions of retreat and enlightenment, let alone the evangelists who have transcended the heavens and are measured in Huanyan. Time and years are no longer meaningful to them, but it does take time to prove it if you want to measure the qualifications of a top cultivation or an immortal. In order to avoid unnecessary troubles, Jian Wushuang directly swallowed thousands of years into his stomach, and casually ridiculed a Chinese year that was about the same age as Xiaodijun. Yuan Jun heard the words and nodded. "It's not bad. At such an age, he is indeed a plastic talent. If you want to be in the same era as me, you will definitely become a great Yangxian now. I can give you very few things, and I can't even teach you anything," he said simply, "but because I promised Yanzi, I decided to grit my teeth and teach you. But you have to promise the old man one thing before this. I will not be by his side in the future. You must protect him in any case." Jian Wushuang heard this, and after a moment of silence, he slowly shook his head. "I'm sorry that the younger generation can't agree." Xiaodijun, who was smiling and watching this scene outside the dojo, was stunned, and even the eyes of Yuan Jun became cold for a moment. "Why?" "Because juniors cannot stay in the big division for a long time. I have a lot of important things to solve, so I can't agree to it." "What an arrogant kid. Do you know who you are bargaining with?" Yuan Jun danced wildly behind him, and the general trend of the 9th-rank Dian immortal was instantly overwhelmed. "Yuan Jun, keep your hands." The little emperor who was outside the dojo hurriedly rushed to block Yuan Jun's general trend. "Don't stop me, let me frustrate this junior's spirit first," he said angrily. "Yuan Jun, there is nothing wrong with what he said. We actually said something before." Xiaodijun smiled reluctantly. "It is unfair to him to let him protect me from now on." Yuan Jun calmed down and frowned. "But if he leaves at any time and I am not by your side, you will be in a passive and dangerous situation at any time." Xiaodijun smiled, then raised his eyebrows and looked at Jian Wushuang. "He won't leave at any time. You must know that we have talked first, and protect me for 70 years. It seems that it's not halfway through now. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4872. Yuan Jun was dissatisfied. It's only 70 years. My breathing effort is longer than this. 70 years for me now is enough to do a lot of things, Xiaodijun said. This will be a node, and many things will happen in this period of time. This 70 years will be the time to lay the foundation, and the value is immeasurable. That's not okay. Yuan Jun said in a grumpy voice, for the sake of only 70 years, I have to work hard to cultivate a great Yangxian. It is really not worthwhile. At this time, Jian Wushuangdao said, predecessors, training and inheritance are actually unnecessary. No, you have to accept the old man's inheritance. In the end, Yuan Jundao said, on the basis of the original 70 years, I want you to protect Xiaodijun 5 times in the future no matter where you are. After pondering for a moment, Jian Wushuang nodded, yes. After some bargaining, it led to the final result. Xiaodijun smiled and left with the excuse of something in the 6th heaven realm, but when he turned around, there was loneliness in his eyes. There were only 2 figures left in the huge dojo. From the beginning of the development to the development of the immortality, it is actually a harsh screening. As far as my perception is concerned, that is the real threshold. It is the real test of starting from nothing and getting the Tao from the world. And the higher realm of Dian Immortal, in my perception and cognition, is actually like a clear spring, letting it go. What I want to say is that those who are trapped in the realm of evolving immortals and unable to break through to the Emperor are all stupid idiots, and stupid idiots with heads on their ass. Yuan Jun scolded him a lot, and added another sentence at the end, of course Xiaodijun is an exception. He is unable to practice because of the lack of luck in the first place. In short, it's just one sentence. Anyone who has enlightenment will never be trapped in the realm of the fairy and unable to break through. Now, you come to tell me, how do you want to break through to Dian Immortal and rely on my inheritance? Jian Wushuang raised his head and said calmly, let's go with the flow. It's good to go with the flow, Yuan Jun sneered. Do you know how I broke through Dian Immortal? He said, end the struggle with war, endless killing. Yuan Jun was startled slightly, and then admired, the eyesight is good. It took me a very short time to go from Yangxian to Dianxian. There was almost no Chinese year interval in between, but during this time, the number of Yangxian who fell in my hands was no less than 100,000, even the Dianxian was close. Hundreds. One of the inheritance I give you now is Yangxian in a short period of time, and transfer a part of the fairy source to your own use. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and his heart was slightly stunned. This is to teach the way of killing. I am afraid that his own big killing will increase a lot. But before that, I'm ready to hammer you junior. Yuan Jun shouted in a cold voice, and at the same time he was in the shape of electricity, crushing it with the world. A touch of bitterness appeared at the corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth, and this fight seemed inevitable. But it is not easy for him to compromise, even if it is an existence that is a level higher than himself, he dares to collide. Probing forward with the invisible sword in his hand. While the sword intent of the Xinghe Lake burst out, the fairy-like mountains and rivers were also covered. The true shadow of the selflessness was blessed for an instant, and the most gorgeous blow broke out. The worst battle began on the chessboard dojo. In the entire third heaven, the Black Sea was tumbling violently. Coming out of the next 3 days, the thin purple robe first met the pale-faced little emperor and draped the cloak on him. His Royal Highness, there have been some changes in the 6-day realm, said the thin purple robe, his expression a little solemn. Xiaodijun raised his eyelids and looked at the deep void ahead. Are they here? Yes, a lot of evangelists have been assembled. Okay, very good. He said 3 good words on his face, and his pale face became more and more ruddy. The Emperor's front feet just left. My good brothers, they want to hang me. In the temple. His Royal Highness, our strength was already damaged when the immortal territory was destroyed. I'm afraid we will be a little bit powerless in the future. The thin purple robe said in a low voice, should you please come to Sword Heaven official. Xiaodijun interrupted him directly, his eyes darkened. Could it be that we can't move without him? How did we get here before without him? This time, even if the background is polished, I will peel them off alive. Yes. With the raging wind raging, the void that had been torn apart in the battle with Shenyu now gathered streams of light from all directions. Roughly counting, there will never be hundreds of Yanxians. They all stopped in the void beyond the six-day realm, and various streamers practiced the entire void into a rainbow shadow. Within the six-day realm, he slowly walked out of the top repair camp like a dark cloud. At the forefront of this top repair camp, there are dozens of immortals listed, all of them with solemn eyes. The top repair camp of hundreds of thousands is full of unimaginable pressure. But in the eyes of those hundreds of Yanxians, it was so ridiculous. They only need to charge back and forth once. I am afraid that the camp formed by the top repairers will be shattered. The next moment, a pale and gloomy figure dressed in luxurious clothes walked out of the six-day realm and soared to the front of the camp. Nearly 200 Yangxian, after seeing this scene, all their complexions changed slightly. They absolutely did not expect that the little emperor would actually go outside the territory in person. With the soft sword in his hand pointing forward, Xiao Dejuan looked forward coldly. From the initial commotion back to calm, the first Yangxian shrouded in black light who couldn't see his figure, took a step forward and said, "His Royal Highness, please step back. We are not here this time. You came, but came towards your six-day realm. As long as we destroy one of the heavens, it is considered to be a job. Don't embarrass us." Xiao Dijun heard the words, sneered coldly, "The son has a broken spine, dog. Since he has been hit by such a heavy injury and he refuses to be honest, I will let him hurt him again today." More than 200 Yanxians stepped forward together, all faces were extremely cold, and their goals were directed at the six-day realm. This was Emperor Zhenwayang's first trial after he left the Great Siu, and a battle of laying the curtain quietly began. "Have you seen it? Young Master Yang seems to be surrounded outside the six-day realm." Kui Jing hurried in the hall where the lights were bright and the fairy clouds curled in, conveying the message. Chun Qiu, who was categorizing some imperial pills, raised his head and glanced at him, and got busy again. "What? Xiao Dijun is besieged." Chen Qing, who was asleep on the case, flashed out of the hall in an instant. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4873. Wei Liujia, who was sitting by the side, slowly opened his eyes, looked around and said, "Then shall we go to be the leader?" Zhao Ting did not speak, but looked at Kui Jing, Chun Qiu, and Di Qing, who was in a big sleep, and found that they didn't mean to go to help at all. In the end, she couldn't help but said, "Aren't you going to help?" "Help? What can I do for you?" After Kui Jing delivered the news, the monkey eagerly took a fairy fruit from the case, then leaned on the pillar and ate it leisurely, and muttered again. "It's not that Brother Jian has something wrong, and what other people have to do with us." Zhao Ting wanted to speak, but after looking around, he finally swallowed the words. She only understood now that all of these men were only looking at Jian Wushuang. Even as the master of the six-day realm, the little emperor was not in their eyes. Don't they fear that the sun will get angry and attack them? Zhao Ting thought about it, but he quickly negated the idea. Except that Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dejuan had an inexplicable relationship, just a mysterious truth, they all captured people to the extreme. Zhao Ting had an intuition that the Gongzi Jiao's diffusion had been destroyed more than half, which definitely had a direct relationship with ditching. At the moment, if you want to bring all of these onto the battlefield, I am afraid that only Jian Wushuang can come. She simply stopped worrying about these nostalgias, and continued to sit up with her eyes closed. After all, even if the entire 6 days had fallen, there were Jian Wushuang and the others in front of them. "I want your lives." With a sword squeezed out, repelling the digital fairy, Xiao Dijun's whole body was surging with strands of black and white intertwined aura, with an irresistible force. That was his unique immortal style, and he could fight against the sun. Once Yangxian understands the immortal style, it is equivalent to touching the realm of Dianxian with one hand, and it is like a crushing existence for ordinary Yangxian. The dozens of immortals led by the thin purple robe, at this moment, under the protection of more than 100,000 top repairers, suffered the smallest losses. But countless repairs are decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Facing the encirclement and suppression of more than 200 Yangxian, even 100,000 top repairers have collapsed. Immediately afterwards, with Chen Qing joining the battle, he abruptly resisted a wave of unstoppable shocks. "His Royal Highness, Leave it to me here. Chen Qing shouted in a deep voice, his strong Yanli blocking more than 10 Yangxian behind him. Behind is the 6-day realm, where can I retreat, tell me? Xiao Dijun said angrily, today is all killed in battle, don't even think of taking a step back. Chen Qing was the first to follow Xiao Dijun. How could he not know his disposition? He said that fighting hard, it is absolutely impossible to take a step back. But the current situation is obviously coming from the 6-day destruction realm, how can it be blocked? Except for that existence. Thinking of this, Chen Qing hurriedly said, Little Emperor, I'm going to see Brother Jian, we will definitely be able to survive this crisis. Xiao Dijun heard the words, stretched out his hand and pulled out his collar, don't find him, wouldn't it be impossible to win without him? Chen Qing wanted to refute, but seeing his cold face, he had to gritted his teeth and said, then you can only fight to the death. After letting go of him, Xiao Dijun rushed forward, facing the army of Yangxian, and raised his sword. Little Emperor, don't force me to wait. A black big palm over the sky forced it back, and Yangxian, who was obscured by the dark clouds and couldn't see his true content, said in a cold voice, and 2 red eyes shot out. We only destroy the 6-day realm, you can leave. With a fierce spit, he wiped off the blood on his face. Xiao Dijun said in a cold voice, the young man sent you here? So what is not? Your 6-day realm will definitely not be able to keep today. The leader Yangxian said coldly, what are you using to stop it? The army behind you is just for making up the number. Xiao Dijun smiled coldly, I can guarantee that as long as you step into these 6-day realms, no one will want to go out alive. Ignoring his threat, he directly led nearly 100 of Yangxian as the head Yangxian to meet him. In an instant, it was capable of destroying hundreds of thousands of celestial realms, and it rose to the top, emitting extremely brilliant brilliance, bursting open before the 6-day realm. Just this shock, the entire top repair army was directly wiped out by 1/10. Every Xianxian who came to this realm was extremely cold and tyrannical at the same time. Every time they make a shot, they can directly wipe out dozens of top repairers, and countless top repairs quickly die. All kinds of powerful moves are irresistible divine punishments for the top repairers, and they can easily destroy the source just by contamination. Damn, a bunch of craps. Chen Qing fought bloody, and wiped out an immortal Yangxian with a palm. Thousands of dazzling lights suddenly condensed behind him, and a dim treasure appeared, all for Laro Tzu go to hell. He manipulated the huge treasure, like a peak, dragging the offensive of more than a dozen immortals. The thin purple robe also led less than 50 Yangxians in a resistance. But even so, it still cannot conceal the trend of decline. More than 200 Yangxians are like an incomparable arrow, piercing into the heart fiercely, unable to pull out. And, as these eternal immortals continued to deepen, streams of light swept from the void in all directions. Every streamer is a fairy. Xiao Dijun's heart also sinks. This time there are more than 100 immortals who have come to the 6-day realm. They stood in the void, and then resolutely joined the battle. Nearly 400 immortals. This is a scene of destruction. The little emperor was stunned in the same place, his face was red and bloody. Mobilizing 400 immortals, who in the entire big division can have such power? The fall of the 6-day realm is a foregone conclusion. This is no longer just a force that young Master Shan can use, and it is bound to contain forces sent by other emperors. With the participation of nearly 100 immortals in the battle, directly overwhelmed the top repair camp in the 6-day realm like a ruin. Countless top repairs died, the portal hole opened in 6 days. Chen Qing's treasure image was smashed in an instant, and various rushing powers shining into the void. Such a battle involving more than 500 Yangxians was almost the most massive battle since Emperor Zhen Wuyang established the Daisy domain. Their goal is to completely destroy the entire 6 days. The void collapsed, the 6-day realm door opened wide, and no force could stop them. And this first one is Degushan Tianyu. His Royal Highness, retreat, the 6-day realm is not guaranteed. The thin purple robe said in a hoarse voice when he arrived behind Xiao Dijun. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4874. After withstanding the fierce attacks of nearly 20 Yanxians, Chen Qing's immortal body was almost broken. He was already shaky. 100,000 repairs are already less than 10,000. Only a dozen of dozens of Yangxian have fallen. After opening the portal of the Six Heavens realm, the Degutian realm that bears the brunt is on the verge of breaking. The various forces that caused the shock of the heavens burst out completely. The power of more than 400 immortals directly shredded the entire Degutian universe. The heavenly air transport, the land plane, at this moment all turned into powder and scattered. At this moment, several figures stood outside the hall, all looking up at this scene with solemn expressions. Looking through the hazy cloud layer, looking at the continent plains, floating in the void after being shattered, it is indescribable miserable. Kui Jing's expression was a little nervous. It seems that this time it is really moving. Da Gutian has been shattered. How many immortals have come here? Looking at this situation, I am afraid at least 200. Zhao Ting said in a rare voice. Much, how much? 200. Kui Jing opened his mouth, as if he had heard the most absurd words. The immortal Yang who came here may be far more than 200. Chun Qiu said at this time, and then he stretched out his palm to point to the void above his head. Sure enough, following the pointing of Chunkius' hand, streamers of various colors converged in the void, and there were no less than 300 or 400 points under the count. Each streamer represents an immortal. But in this instant, they completely annihilated the Degu Tiantian domain and attacked the next heavenly domain. Good guys, aren't they rushing to us here? Kui Jing looked a little ugly. Hundreds of immortals, I'm afraid we. With the dignified and deadly atmosphere, ditching stretched out from the temple, what is noisy and rants, a good night's sleep is disturbed. Chun Qiu and others saw Di Qing awakening from sleep, and felt calm in their hearts inexplicably. Although they didn't know the depth of Daiking's realm, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Kui Jing immediately said, a total of 300 to 400 Yanxians, all of whom have entered the six-day realm. I am afraid that it will not be long before they hit us. Di Qing came to the outside of the hall and looked up at the sky. Sure enough, dozens of streamers had already broken through the barrier and poured into Shaogushan. Good fellow, it seems that those who want to kill young Master Yang are no less than those who want to kill young Master Mo. Di Qing slowly raised the corners of his mouth. Kui Jing asked, are we going to escape now? Escape? Where to escape? Diqing glanced at him, then looked at the immortals who were about to descend from the sky. Wu Shuang has not yet returned. If we leave now, we will cause a lot of unnecessary trouble. Just stay here, kill as many immortals as you come. Daiking's golden eyes suddenly sharpened, and layers of red gold ripples surged around him, with a trembling breath. Then he directly ascended to the sky. I'm afraid it's not crazy. Kui Jing was dumbfounded. He is not crazy. He is ready to fight. Chun Qiu said, drew a dagger condensed by power from his waist. Kui Jing gritted his teeth, then I will be crazy. Above the dim sky, nearly 100 Yangxian stepped into Shaogushan at the same time. Looking at this extremely abundant universe, they didn't hesitate to directly urge the force to destroy it. At this moment, a lazy and cold voice suddenly resounded from all directions, a bunch of unopened chops, get out. All the Yangxian gathered here, their eyes condensed, and then looked straight ahead. Di Qing stepped into the air, but the power released by the whole body was all restrained, like the most humble top repair. Hearing this insulting sound, the leader of the old My Yangxian's eyes suddenly condensed, and he screamed, I want to die. After the words were over, a black pagoda that shook the sky and the earth smashed down from his hands. Di Qing didn't even bother to lift his eyelids. Facing the black tower that was rising by 1,000,000 feet against the storm, he made a shocking move. He raised his head, opened his mouth, and directly spit out. Just such a spit, facing the wind, like shooting a divine arrow from the sun, suddenly spit on the black tower. Rumble. That mouthful of saliva exuding golden light easily smashed the black tower, and then shot at the old My Yangxian unabated. Chirp. With the millions of feet of black pagoda shattered, old My Yangxian slowly lowered his head to look at his immortal body. I saw that from the neck down, the entire belly of the fairy body disappeared, and even the fairy source was directly annihilated into nothingness. Why, what's the matter? Until the final fall, he couldn't believe that he was spitting to death. The sky fell into a dead silence, and all the Yangxian gathered took a step back, watching Di Qing vigilantly. I said that you can destroy the entire six-day realm wherever you want, but here is the only way. Di Qing looked at them and said lazily, Smuggles, did I say clearly enough? Do you need to repeat it? Again. After a short period of death, a middle-aged Yangxian with a clean face and no need took a step forward and said in a condensed voice, Who are you? We will not embarrass you. It's not difficult for me. Di Qing raised his brows. That's how you guys of the younger generation talk to Lao Tzu? Having said this, Di Qing directly stretched out his hand and held it in the air. Then the middle-aged Yangxian could not speak, his complexion was purple and black, and even Yanli was directly pinched out. Then, his head burst open without warning, and even his entire fairy body was torn apart. I repeat it one last time, now I leave here, this seat will not be held accountable, if I insist on destroying this place, I will kill you. Di Qing brushed his sleeves, his face sinking like water. At this moment, all Yangxian felt a kind of supreme pressure inexplicably. That kind of pressure made them all hesitate, and for a while, no one dared to step forward. But with more and more immortals, soared into this little lonely sky, and the atmosphere began to change from dead silence to restlessness. In the spring and autumn period, Kui Jing, Zhao Ting, and Wei Lujia's Yangxian also came, all looking solemnly at the overwhelming Yangxian ahead. Facing such a situation, Di Qingyun was calm, as if he didn't pay attention to it at all, but then a secret sound came from his mouth. Hey, listen to me. I haven't fully recovered yet. I'm afraid it will be difficult to deal with so many immortals. So if you don't scare them away later, how far will you run, do you understand? Chun Qiu and others all turned from shock to helplessness, feeling like they were on a broken ship. Kui Jing's expression turned bitter. I put such a big aura together with you, was it to scare them away? Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4875. The sky above the sky is all covered by the Huamang of immortals, and the forces gathered by more than 400 immortals are unimaginable. The atmosphere became more restless. The more than 10 Yangxians in the lead also glanced at each other at this time, and then sent a tentative blow. Yang force surging, like a startling dragon violently plundering Xiong Di Qing. He smiled coldly, his palms suddenly closed, and thousands of golden lights shot up, like a big net bag strangling down. The more than a dozen Yangxians didn't even have time to retreat, and they were all strangled by Jin Mang and turned into fans. Those who dare to take the first step, die. Di Qing drank coldly, and at the same time an invisible treasure that covered millions of miles appeared. All Yangxians were frightened, but after they looked at each other, they all released their forces in the next moment, strangling together. Di Qing, who was originally extremely arrogant, saw this mighty scene and said directly, "Run." At the last moment, it also revealed the improper bravery of Spring and Autumn and the others, and at the next moment, they turned back and ran without a trace. Catch up and run them to death. As the trembling sound resounded, the entire Xiao Gutian began to fall apart. The continent plane was shattered, and the six-day realm excluding the Wanmushan, the vastest heaven outside Degushan, and Shaogushan eventually shattered. Wherever hundreds of Yangxians passed, Tianyu was destroyed. So far, the entire six-day realm has been damaged. His Royal Highness, go find Brother Jian, otherwise the entire six-day realm will be destroyed. Chen Qing's face was exhausted, and he was already at the end of the force. Outside the emptiness of the six-day realm, the little emperor was totally lost. The thin purple robe also said at this time, His Royal Highness, go to the Sword Heaven official, the six-day realm is destroyed, and all the details will no longer exist. And the remaining 10 Yangxian around him, none of them dared to speak. At this time, all the foundations of the six-day realm were almost wiped out. Even if the Sword Heaven official appeared, I was afraid that it would not be able to recover. There was a ray of divine blood pouring out of the corner of his mouth without warning, and Xiao Dijun's figure was shaky. The thin purple robe stretched out his hand to support him, and then handed him a square scarf. Slowly wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth, Xiao Dijun's gaze seemed to become compromised. Go to the third heaven and meet the sword heaven official. Where are we going to escape? There are chasing soldiers behind. Kui Jing's panting voice resounded in the void, and Chun Qiu and others followed Di Qing, fleeing desperately. At the forefront, Diqing closed his eyes tightly, as if feeling some breath. Stop talking, I'm feeling where Wushuang is. Di Qing said, then opened his eyes and looked into the deep void ahead. There, it was the third horizon in the next 3 days. After Xiao Gutian was completely wiped out, hundreds of Yangxian horses kept running, and also followed Diqing closely, and gathered for the next 3 days. If we rashly brought so many Yangxian to Brother Jian, won't something happen? Stopping in the void of the third heaven, Kui Jing said nervously. Of course something will happen, so the top priority now is to call Wushuang out and let's leave here together. Di Qing frowned and said, you guys go in and find Wushuang. I'll stop here for a while. Chun Qiu nodded. He was not an indecisive person. Dang even soared into the third heaven. With the arrival of Di Qing and the others, it was Xiao Dijuan and Chen Qing who came to meet. When Chen Qing saw them, he said with joy, my dear, I know that there is nothing wrong with you. You are also looking for Brother Jian? Kui Jing greeted them. His mother, there are too many gangsters. Come here and leave here with Brother Jian before making plans. Chen Qing gritted his teeth. Just in the time to speak, those immortals who are like Tarsus maggots also came. There are still more than 400 Yangxians left, and they are like the stars of the sun, and the aura that they exude is depressing to the extreme. 400 Yangxians, even if you look at the entire Darciu, are unimaginable existence. Excluding Dian Immortal, they are the pinnacle forces in the entire Great Division region, waving their hands to destroy the stars, and destroying the universe with their fingers. So that they were able to push the Emperor's son under the seat of Zhen Wuyang like a dog of the mourning family, arrogant to the extreme. Let's get out of the way, I'm only waiting to destroy the 6-day realm, and the rest of the immortals will not be affected. The black robe immortal Urn, who was shrouded in dark clouds, said, otherwise, you will all funeral. Di Qing's face was stunned, and there was a touch of disgust in his eyes. If I don't let it go, what should I do? No! Then die. The black robe Yangxian screamed, using his whole body as the origin. The void collapsed rapidly, and at the same time, one after another, like 9 nether pythons, drilled out of the collapsed void and went straight. Di Qing strangled and left. With his hands, nearly 100 Yangxian also released a full blow at this moment. All kinds of powers that can easily tear apart the laws of heaven, accompanied by billions of rainbow shadows, fell down. Damn it! Di Qing gritted his teeth. He hasn't recovered from the loss of a true life, and I'm afraid he will be hit hard again. Xianxian is above the heavenly way, beyond the shackles of existence. Even the most ordinary Xianxian can wave to create the heavenly way. Therefore, at the moment, the combined force of nearly 100 immortals can't even bear the rules of heaven. The endless void collapsed, and the shock it caused would even twist the next 3 days into dust. It's just that, the next moment, the sudden change occurs. The horrible blow that even the rules of heaven could not bear, but it has not fallen. Time seemed to stagnate, and even the collapsed void was closing. Sui Qing, who was gritting his teeth about to explode, was stunned when he saw this scene. Everything was strangely silent. Then a mysterious scene appeared, and a brilliant tianhe that stretched for hundreds of millions of miles quietly floated above the void, and easily swallowed the blow that gathered nearly 100 immortals. All Yangxian looked towards the source of the river that day. I saw a spirit with his upper body naked, his body rising in blood slowly coming out of the barrier. With every step of his movement, has wisps of blood surging under his skin to the extreme. And behind this figure, there stood another figure in a black robe like a peak. A strand of ink dripped down the black robe into the void. He slowly raised his head, and a lot of blood began to escape from the original red-golden eyes. Sword heaven official. The remaining Yangxian behind Xiao Dijuan and the tens of thousands of Ding Xiu opened their eyes wide at this moment, their hearts like drums. Xiao Dijun slightly raised the corners of his mouth, and then returned to peace. Di Qing also raised his eyebrows slightly and let out a sigh of relief. He didn't even realize that after seeing Jian Wushuang appear, he would completely relax. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4876. Streaks of blood rushed like a mountain ravine, surging in his naked upper body, as if even the void began to tremble. Jian Wushuang felt that the surging force in his meridians seemed to have reached a certain critical point, and he needed to burst out completely. The uncontrollable scorching heat seemed to make his fairy body burn completely, and the figure that resembled a godlike peak behind him was a true shadow of Yuan Jun, completely attached to Jian Wushuang's back. When the Tianhe vision disappeared, the hundreds of Yangtzeans were in shock and looked forward with lingering fears. In spring and autumn, Qi Jing and others also stabilized from the previous panic. As early as when the Yangtzean army attacked the Six-Day Realm, Jian Wushuang in the third day of the next 3 days was vaguely aware, but because he was in the Yuanzhan's inheritance realm, the passage of time was different. The induction is minimal. If it hadn't been for Chun Qiu's voice, I'm afraid that the third heaven domain would be destroyed, and Jian Wushuang would wake up. Since you have come out, it's easy to handle. Shall we run away or fight? Diqing looked at him, and inexplicably belligerent arose in his heart. Of course it is to fight back. Looking at Mantian Yangxian, Jian Wushuang had no fear in his eyes, and he even transported Yanli to the peak. The blood surging in his body is too exuberant and terrifying. It is almost different from when he has not yet gone to the third heaven. And all of this originated from the inheritance of Yuan Jun. Although it took less than a month to enter the domain of Yuan Jun, the time-lapse inside was completely different from that of the outside world. Jian Wushuang had roughly calculated that 1 day is at least worth 100 years outside. In other words, Jian Wushuang has been in the field for at least 2,000 years. 2,000 years of continuous battles turned the karma that he had infiltrated in the Sand Demon Cave into thorough blood. Yuan Jun stopped killing by fighting and was promoted to the position of Dian Immortal by endless killing. His way is simple and pure, with only the word killing. And he handed it to Jian Wushuang. It was 4 words. The way of killing. Right now, Jian Wushuang wants to try to loosen the bottleneck and break through Dian Immortal. Step forward slowly. Diqing, Chuanqiu, Qi Jing and others are no longer ready to flee. All of them follow behind him, facing the sky full of immortals, without fear. Under Dian Immortal, Jian Wushuang was invincible. Between the eyebrows, a 7-star system is slowly flowing, and the true shadow of the selfless blesses its body. Pretend to be a god, Yu Yangxian shouted, and then took the lead in leading more than 10 Yangxian flying away. All kinds of overwhelming powers are bombarded, and there is even a pharaoh-like atmosphere in them. Jian Wushuang stepped forward abruptly, stretched out his right palm, facing Yangxian who flew over, pointed like a sword, and slashed down lightly. A scarlet sword glow, rising by 1,000,000 feet against the storm, cut the void in half, and crazily shattered. Seeing this, the Yangxian who was on the top of the front hurriedly released Yanli, trying to cut the sword light. But this scarlet sword light is really too vast and grand, and even the rules of the heavens are easily broken, and the void ripples that it drives envelop them in an instant. Puff. A total of 13 evangelists, under this 1,000,000-meter scarlet sword light, the immortal body shattered and exploded into a cloud of blood. A single sword cut easily wiped out the 13 immortals. Such a shocking scene once again stunned the Mantian immortals. They couldn't believe it at all. This guy is just the peak of immortal regeneration, so why can he kill an immortal that is dozens of times more than him in one blow? Not only did they frighten them, but even Di Qing's brows jumped. He felt that Jian Wushuang's change seemed a bit too fast. When he first met in Xianju of Northern Heaven, he was just a fascinating evangelist until he strayed into the former heaven, fought in the heavens, and stepped into the Fairyland. After these series of things, he seemed to have completely transformed into a long life. It's just that this growth rate is too fast, and even Di Qing is a little moved. The sword that was cut out used the hand as the sword, but it still issued 10% of the power. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship and sword intent were unknowingly tainted by the way of killing, becoming bloodthirsty and bloodthirsty. The depths of his eyes were no longer pure red gold, but mixed with scarlet. Hula! It was like a pouring rain of ink, and the figure of Yuan Jun behind Jian Wushuang seemed to wake up, shaking off the raindrops on his black robe. A group of bug-like guys have only eaten their luck for so many years. Before they have completely become the climate, they have gone astray. If this is the case, just stay here. As Yuan Jun Jianying's dull voice fell, the originally broken void began to be covered by patches of dark red tide. Under this dark red tide, all the immortals only feel that the source of the immortal is throbbing, the force of the evolving has accelerated the circulation, and there is an uncontrollable agitation in the meridians. Boy, these bugs will be handed over to you. Only after all of them are wiped out will I recognize you. This Yuan Jun Jianying, after releasing these dark red tides, exhausted all its energy, and then dispersed with the wind. Seeing that all over the sky, the bitterness of Jian Wushuang's mouth flashed away, and then became extremely cold. The next moment, facing the sky full of immortals, he actually took the lead in taking the shot. His body was shattered into the void, and two big palms directly covered him. The few Yanxians who were trying to stop, even just started to use their power, their heads were shattered. Go together, slaughter for 6 days, the leader of the black robe Yangxian roared, and a long, narrow red wing shot out from his sleeve, twisting directly towards Jian Wushuang. Smugglers, Laro Tzu made you long eyes today, Di Qing shouted coldly, and at the same time millions of miles of void collapsed, and from a huge vortex, a giant claw surging with golden light descended. With the arrival of this giant claw, the entire void was completely chaotic, all the order and rules of the heavens were all in disorder, and the infinite wind surged from the broken place. Every piece of golden scales is clear to the extremely clear giant claws, gripping down fiercely, and there are immortals unable to dodge, directly destroys the source of the soul. As Diqing joined the battle, the pressure on Jian Wushuang was also relieved. He drew the sword up, and the invisible sword in his hand had also turned dark red due to the infiltration of killing intent. A sword shattered a middle-aged fairy source. Jian Wushuang began to kill frantically. In the realm of Yuan Jun, he has fought Yuan Jun non-stop for 1,500 years. For the remaining 500 years, he only did one thing that had nothing to do with kendo. He uses himself as a hammer and everything as a sword embryo, mechanically and repeatedly doing the most primitive sword drawing and slashing, completely abandoning any sword style. And the reason why he did this was because of the truth that Ding Beichun, who had been in the sword sky, day after day, who had not known how many years he had built a sword, had learned. From the avenue to the simplicity, it evolves to the complex. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4877. The initial opening of these billions of heavens and the earth, as well as how many reincarnations the universe has experienced, have long been beyond imagination. But all the avenues are pure and simple from the beginning. Swordsmanship is no exception. It also conforms to the principles of Tao Te Ching, and the various kendos, sword intents, and sword styles that are derived later are consistent with the principles of evolving to multiplication. Therefore, Jian Wushuang began to comprehend the most original true meaning of kendo from Ding Beichun's simplest movements. And perhaps only he himself knew why Jian Wushuang did this. Swordsmanship is his foundation, his avenue. Going back to the source and seeking the ultimate true meaning may be able to open up a real path. He sat down with repeated and numb movements, and rushed into the Tian Yangxian alone, completely disrupting the situation. Di Qing followed closely, with 10 wings bursting out of his back, and constantly bursting out deadly golden feathers. In the spring and autumn period, Kui Jing also followed closely. A look of worry flashed between Wei Lujia's eyebrows, and then he rushed forward without hesitation. Zhao Ting originally wanted to stop him, but still retracted her palms. Looking at the extremely unbalanced situation ahead, she sighed faintly, then used her strength to join it. The 5 fairy gods headed by Jian Wushuang, and one of the 9-rank Dian gods, abruptly tore a hole in the surrounding. The 400 Yangxian camp was wiped out, nearly 80 people instantly under this rush. His Royal Highness, the 6 Heavens realm is already intact. The thin purple robe leaned over and said, "Let's do something for Gentian officials." Xiao Dijun looked at the back like a god, a look of fatigue flashed under his eyes. "Go." Telling. Chen Qing couldn't wait. He wanted to fight with Zhen Wushuang too much, even if the fairy body only recovered slightly, he rushed out in an instant. The remaining immortals in the six-day realm, go and follow Zhen Tianguan. The thin purple robe brushed his sleeves and said in a condensed voice. The remaining 10 or so Yangxians glanced at each other, and then gritted their teeth and all rushed forward. With a sword slashing down the head of Yangxian in front of him, Zhen Wushuang descended an ancestral technique, the heavenly gate of power. The magnificent Tianmen door opened, illuminating the entire void, and one party seemed to be carrying tens of thousands of rounds of the big sun with a giant finger cover pressing down. Suddenly hit the digital fairy. This is the most mysterious ancestral technique that Jushin has given him. It made Zhen Wushuang once invincible and supreme with half a step, and it was enough to collide with the virtual and true shadow without losing the wind. But now, after entering the study of the great evolving world, ancestral technique has shown fatigue, especially in the face of evolving immortals, although it can still achieve the desired effect, but if the eternal evolving is fully protected and avoided, it can still be to offset the heavy damage caused by the ancestral technique. However, Zhen Wushuang could feel that the two ancestral arts of the power world Tianmen and Tianmen Jiu were definitely not the limit, there should be the last two styles. However, I don't know if it was because of entering the ultimate evolvement, or because of the complete dissipation of Jushin's sentiment, the ancestral technique was completely blocked the ascending space, and in the end only these two types were left. Brother Sword, Chen Qing is here to help you. With a loud laugh, Chen Qing's godlike figure soared to Zhen Wushuang's side. Pay attention. Yijian cut towards Yangxian who was chasing behind him. After Zhen Wushuang raised his eyebrows and smiled, he continued his fierce battle. The faction of Man Tian Yangxian began to be chaotic. They were not sent by one force, but at least by the combination of two forces, and naturally began to collapse. But the 400 immortals were too vast and terrifying, even under the combined force of Zhen Wushuang and Di Qing, they collapsed without chaos, and began to counterattack. There are only more than 300 people left at this moment. If there is no pressure from ditching, it will certainly not kill nearly 100 Yangxian instantly. Under the cover of Yuanzhan's intention to kill, Zhen Wushuang completely opened the way of killing, and for a while, no fairy could get close to him. In the field of Yuanzhan's inheritance, he can comprehend his killing in a short period of thousands of years, which is also a mistake. This is because once in the Sand Demon Cave, Shouqing, the lord of the Sand Demon Cave, designed to plant a karma on Zhen Wushuang. It was precisely because of this that Yuanzhan was aware of the strong blood qi hidden in his body and directly converted the blood qi that could not be removed from Zhen Wushuang's body into the meaning of killing. Only then did he realize the way of killing in just 1,000 years. Now, Zhen Wushuang has 3 daos on his body, the main dao is the sword, the other 2 avenues are the way of guarding, and the way of killing obtained from Yuanzhan. The way of guarding is the way he obtained when he ascended to the of the universe. Although it is dusty, it still exists, providing Zhen Wushuang with a steady stream of luck and insight. He has gone beyond the scope of the ordinary fairy cultivating, and even the fairy cultivating who also masters the immortal style can hardly take any advantage under his hands, and will even die if he is not careful. No one Yangxian can stop Zhen Wushuang's offensive, and even more than a dozen Yangxian team members will only be defeated. Facing such an unthinkable enemy, the assembled Yangxian has become a living target instead. But this situation was reversed next. End up. A deep shout sounded all over the void, with a striking aura. And with this deep drink resounding, Dang even got away from the 60 eternal immortals, and jointly released the vast evolving power. Because Zhen Wushuang and Di Qing went too far into the Yangxian camp, they were the first to be affected. The Jetian array was magnificent, and a total of 60 Yangxians formed a 6-sided array. The moment the formation was completed, everything seemed to be a foregone conclusion. Small bugs, dare you stop this seat? Di Qing was angry, and directly shook the 10 wings behind his back. Thousands of golden feathers shot out, all of them towards the big formation barrier. Zheng, clank. Jin Yu directly submerged in the barrier. Instead of breaking the barrier, it was absorbed and the big formation grew again. Ditching frowned and frowned. This big array seems to absorb the damage. Jian Wushuang also frowned. He didn't like breaking the formation the least. It was a waste of time and energy, especially at this critical point, which was almost fatal. There are only two ways to break the formation like this kind of formation that can absorb damage and absorb transformation. One is to break through the critical point of the formation with one's own strength to get out of the trap, and the second is to defeat the formation by external forces. But in this formation, each formation consisted of 10 immortals, and it was almost impossible to break the formation from the outside, relying on Chen Qing and Chuanqiu. Only break the formation from within. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing glanced at each other and made up their minds. The true shadow of the selflessness reunited and transformed into a treasure-like appearance. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4878. This is the second time that Jian Wushuang has condensed the true shadow of the selflessness. The first time to condense was to completely defeat Zhong Tianxia, the lord of the celestial sect of the immortal territory, and exploded his bitter wheel immortal style with the true shadow of selflessness. This is Jian Wushuang's second immortal style, a special immortal style independent of a little mountain and river. Accompanied by an unrestrained and wanton figure, Jian Wushuang's whole body burst into blood and energy, like the real shadow of the gods. Di Qing did not stop, and a black Wubao image gradually condensed, and it continued to expand and stretch for thousands of miles in the big formation. Chen Qing, Chun Qiu, and others all backed away, watching this scene nervously. Through the colorful array, you can see a treasure image. A black crow is soaring wildly. Almost between dozens of interest rates, it skyrocketed to 1,000,000 feet. But the formation showed no signs of breaking. Based on 60 Yangtzeans, the formation is too solid. Although every Yangtzean's complexion turned red, the steady flow of energy still firmly bound Jian Wushuang and ditching in it. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's true shadow of selflessness has grown to billions of millions of meters, which has exceeded the height of the previous battle with Shenyu Tianzong Zhongtian, but it still failed to burst the big formation. The clear black Wuberoxiang has also reached a certain critical point. Damn, these gangsters are waiting for me to go out and crush them one by one, Di Qing said with a flushed face. He had just been damaged shortly after his life was damaged, and his strength was far from recovered, so that he was allowed to wait for this formation. Besieged. Jian Wushuang's brows furrowed tightly, and if Wu Mei Zhanying couldn't tear apart the formation, he might have to find another way. With the completion of the formation, the remaining 200 Yangtzean began to march again in the next 3 days of the 6-day realm. Obviously, before they came to the 6 heavens realm, they were all given orders to destroy the 6 heavens realm desperately. Just when the formation was completed, the black robe Yangtzean, who had been mysterious to the extreme and gave orders from time to time, soared to the top of the formation, quietly condensing a dark short sword with forearm length in his hand. The little emperor, who was watching from a distance, quietly condensed his eyes, and the next moment his figure directly violent, holding a soft sword resolutely rushed towards the big formation. The thin purple robe also set off at this time, following Xiao Dijuan closely. A group of evangelists who acted as the foot of the big formation constantly exchanged positions and released the evangelists to strengthen. When the next time Yangtzean exchanged positions, a dead silence, emptiness, black and white aura quietly rose. That was Xiao Dijun's immortal style. The immortal style with a full blow, burst out in one of the weakest positions. It is no easy task to act as an all-out script, and it is impossible to stop this all-out immortal style. Among the 10 evangelists, 4 fell on the spot, and the remaining 6 were all hit hard. At this point, the 6 formations, under the full blow of Xiao Dijuan, crashed one. It was precisely because of this blow that the entire array was on the verge of destruction. Jian Wushuang and Diqing, who were besieged in the formation, were also aware of them, and directly lifted the Wu Mei True Shadow and Black Wuberoxiang up again, finally breaking the entire formation. "You wanna die?" The black robe Yangxian holding a jet-black dagger fell from the top of the big formation, looking at Xiao Dijun with anger, then his figure suddenly turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared. Until Xiao Dijun noticed it again, the black robe Yangxian had reunited in front of him. The long and narrow short sword that was condensed with black power fell directly and easily went into his heart. There, it is basically a place where immortals are generally condensed. This sword came rushing to kill. Xiao Dijun's pupils suddenly condensed, and then slowly collapsed. His Royal Highness. At this moment, the thin purple robe was completely lost. He flew over, condensing the power of his palm and rushing towards the black robe. The Haipao Yangxian was also apparently taken aback. After reacting, he threw the little emperor's fairy body out like trash, and then fled. The thin purple robe caught Xiao Dijun, and his original withered and steady face was filled with helplessness. Your Highness, Your Highness. My big companion, tell Jian Wushuang, run away. Xiao Dijun reluctantly opened his eyes, and fainted after speaking these last words. The thin purple robe nodded, and after holding him tightly in his arms, he flew towards Chen Qing. Jian Wushuang, who had seen all this scene in his eyes, gradually cooled his eyes. Looking at the black robe Yangxian who wanted to escape, he pursued without any hesitation. It was like a sword of slaughter that was soaked with blood. No Yangxian could stop him. Di Qing followed his Jiwei Jian Wushuang, who belonged to the ninth rank Dian Immortal's strength, which was fully revealed at this moment. With a thought of mountains and rivers adding to his body, but after a few breaths, he tied the black robe Yangxian, and then stabbed it with a sword. Haipao Yangxian, who had no time to dodge, was directly cut off his right arm by Jian Wushuang. He was in pain, turned around and slammed out. Jian Wushuang did not dodge, and after resisting the blow abruptly, he stabbed it again. The black robe Yangxian exhaled in pain, and the sword intent contained in the invisible sword poured into his meridians and strangled almost instantly. Damn thing, today you have one count, and none will survive. Jian Wushuang said in a cold voice. The invisible sword in his hand was shaken, and Wubi's sword intent finally pulled it into powder. In the next moment, a vague voice resounded in the shattered void. What an extremely arrogant junior, both in speech and in acting style, are full of hostility. The world was silent, and all Yangxian looked towards the place where the sound was made. Di Qing's face was solemn, and he smelled a breath that only belonged to Dian Immortal. The dark red void was torn apart a crack, and then a middle-aged figure with his hands on his back came out from it. The breath surging around him was purer and more unfathomable than Yangxian. As he walked around, even the broken heavenly Tao began to slowly repair. This middle-aged man is dressed in an elegant gown, and the clean face does not need to be quite elegant. After coming here, he looked at Jian Wushuang and slowly shook his head. I don't like the hostility that emanates from you very much, but in order not to delay my time, you leave here, and I will let you make a living. Jian Wushuang raised his brows, and the corners of his mouth raised. You, what are you? The rather elegant middle-aged man was taken aback. Obviously he did not expect that a little fairy would actually humiliate him. When he reacted, the original elegant gown suddenly shook, and an unimaginable power beyond Yangxian covered the entire broken void. Under this coercion, all the fairy tales felt bored, the fairy source shrank, and even the radiant power flowing in the fairy body was slow to a certain extent. What an unobstructed junior boy, since you are begging to die, I will promise you and send you to death. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4879. Dian Immortal. That is the breath that only Dian Immortal can possess. A rather refined middle-aged man, with black hair dancing wildly at this moment, layers of dark blue diamond-shaped leaves like armor, also covering his gown. All the surging power in the void poured out towards him, constantly growing. Watching this scene calmly, Jian Wushuang violently agitated a high-pitched emotion deep in his heart. Wushuang, fast back, he is Dian Immortal. Daiking's voice came from behind in due course. Jian Wushuang looked back at him and smiled slightly. I have a sense of measure. Now I need this battle to know where I have grown. At the beginning in the divine power universe, He was able to kill the invincible Supreme with half a step of invincibility, trample on the snake to destroy the 8 wilderness, and fight against the virtual god. Now, in Dianhuan, he is still the original Jian Wushuang, the Jian Wushuang who overwhelmed the ages. Is this guy crazy? Di Qing frowned and murmured softly, does he not know the gap between the two, or is he confident that he can defeat Dian Immortal? No, it's impossible. Di Qing shook his head, and he denied it in his heart. Even if Jian Wushuang's rapid growth shocked him, it didn't mean that he believed that Jian Wushuang could defeat Dian Immortal with the power of Yangxian. Even if you look at the entire Daci area, or even Dianhuan, there is absolutely no such precedent. Between the layers of realm, there is the sky moat. Even though he was thinking this way, Di Qing still looked at the back that was as tough as a god. Damn, what am I expecting? Not only Di Qing had such incredible thoughts, but even Yangxian all over the sky looked at Jian Wushuang with a foolish look. Yu Yangxian recognized the middle-aged man who came to the 6-day realm at a glance. He was famous for a long time, but the 9-day fairy monarch who had traveled in the big division for decades, often dueling. His deeds of fame have been heard by almost the entire Yangxian of Daciu. The reason why Chang Duoling was called the 9 Heavens Immortal Monarch is because on the day he achieved the position of Dian Immortal, he used his own power to slaughter the vast immortal realm in the Great Division. You must know that this 9 Heavens Immortal territory can almost be called, it is a superpower that ranks high in the entire Great Division territory, and each immortal territory has no less than 50 immortals. But just like this, the 9 Heavens Immortal territory was often slaughtered by one person, and none of Yangxian Dingxiu survived. And this battle was too shocking to the world and shocked the heavens. Emperor Zhen Wuyang personally ordered him to be detained and exiled to the Endless Sea for several years. After that battle, Chang Duoling's name was known to Yangxian. But at this moment, 9 Heavens Immortal Monarch Chang Duoling appeared in the 6-day realm again, which aroused a lot of momentum. The targeted Jian Wushuang not only did not escape, but instead faced off. This could no longer be described as a worm shaking the tree and overpowering himself. To be precise, he was preparing to commit suicide without any suspense. Kui Jing rubbed his eyes vigorously, and said in disbelief, Brother Jian, are you ready to fight Dianxian? Chun Chiu tightly held the dagger in his hand, without speaking. The young man who started from the prisoner of Montenegro in the next 3 days and who has rarely spoken much so far, seems to have some kind of magic power to make those who follow him believe in him unconsciously, even if the goal is insurmountable. Of the sky. With one step out, Jian Wushuang's rich blood surging around his body began to be restrained, replaced by a clear and pure golden orn tassel. It was as if he had entered a certain realm, and the strands of golden light began to flow between the shoulder-length hair, so brilliant that Yangxian could not look directly at its glory. Chang Duoling of the so-called 9 Heavens Immortal Monarch, at this moment, the whole body of the Confucian shirt was covered by the dark blue diamond-shaped armor leaf, and his aura climbed to a terrifying state. Junior, go to death, he said coldly, as if he had lowered his punishment. The endless void shattered, and even the dark red tide water field arranged by Yuanjun True Shadow was torn under this breath. Deep blue torrents of 10,000 feet thick and thin, drilled out of the broken void, like a real dragon in the world twisted and rushed, all strangling Xiong Jian Wushuang. There are hundreds of these deep blue torrents like the great pillars of the sky, hanging from the cracks in the void, a scene of ruining the world. All evolving immortals are horrified. This is a completely indiscriminate offensive. Once it is contaminated, it will be completely destroyed. So at this moment they were in a tacit understanding, and they all retreated quickly to avoid being affected. And Di Qing and the others also held their breaths, and were extremely nervous. The blow of Dian Immortal is 10 times, or even 100 times better than that of Dian Immortal. I am afraid Jian Wushuang will have a big crisis. The deep blue torrents that destroyed the void collided with each other and swallowed him completely. Only the whistling sound of torrents remained in each Yangxian's ears. Chang Duoling looked at this scene and smiled disdainfully, the incompetent. But the next moment, a sword aura burst into the sky, and a million Zhong sword aura rushed and split, and after directly cutting the deep blue torrent in 2 sections, the smashing attack continued to Chang Duoling. He raised his brows, and then pressed his finger away, with endless strength, directly offsetting a million sword energy. This scene was so fast that it would all end when all Yangxian who was watching reacted. The raging deep blue torrent dissipated, and the figure still stood on the spot, without even making any movements. The long hair behind his back moved slowly. Jian Wushuang seemed like a big day that couldn't be seen directly, and then stretched out his right hand, facing Chang Duolingyi and pointing it out. Boom! A giant finger across the sky condensed, crushing forward heavily, and wherever it passed, the void was plowed by a million-mile ravine. Chang Duoling's gaze condensed. He didn't expect this ant to be in trouble, but his hand was unambiguous, and a palm slammed out. The two supreme Yanli forces collided in a big way, and the wind and air currents swept across the void, and Yangxian who was a little closer was almost lifted out. Ditching brows slightly, eyes towards Jian Wushuang's back are full of solemnity. This was only a couple of fights. Let him understand that Jian Wushuang did not do anything uncertain, and this battle with Dian Immortal, I am afraid the ending will be reversed. It is unimaginable to fight Dianxian with Yangxian and have been undefeated several times. At this moment, even Chang Duoling couldn't help but wonder, this is just a junior at the peak of immortality, how could it withstand his offensive and counterattack? And Jian Wushuang, at this moment, also slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid breath. During these several encounters, he had reached the realm of Chang Duoling's reality. Di Qing said earlier in the morning that Dian Immortal has 3 most important realms, which are 3 or 6 or 9 turns, and each turn is a complete transformation. However, the promotion from Yangxian to Dianxian is not directly at the beginning of the 3rd stage, but is referred to as the initial stage. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4880. The initial realm is the initial realm of Dianxian. Right now, the 9 heavens immortal monarch Chang Duoling was in such a realm of Dian Immortal, which was far away from the realm of 3rd revolution. Rao was so, that was the real Dian Immortal, and Jian Wushuang felt an unprecedented pressure. Junior, no matter how much resistance you do, it is useless. I want you to die, and now no one can save you. Chang Duo made a sneer at the corner of his mouth, like a last pity. Jian Wushuang also sneered, is that right? The so-called Dian Immortal can only slap. Are you going to drown me with saliva? Chang Duo's complexion was cold, and his palm suddenly reminded him, and suddenly there were thousands of dark blue beetles on his body. Every beetle is full of violent power. Jian Wushuang held high with his left hand, and a sacred mountain appeared out of thin air and stood in front of him. Boom. Every piece of a leaf smashed on the top of the mountain, and there was a burst of explosions. He started to retreat, the galaxy between his brows slowly circling. The mountain only resisted for a moment, and then a body with supreme power violently shot at Jian Wushuang. Because the speed was too fast, when Jian Wushuang made a fight, the unstoppable force directly bombarded his fairy body. The shattered void immediately scatters layers of ripples. Chang Duoling's expression was cold, and after a heavy blow, he exploded completely in Jian Wushuang's belly. Thousands of punches in a flash, every blow is enough to break the source of the ordinary eternal fairy. Boom. With the last punch passing through the body, Jian Wushuang's entire fairy body was punched with a big hole, and then Chang Duo made a cold smile, and hundreds of dark blue armor leaves suddenly reflected behind him, all bombarding him. The void, which was already shattered, was completely covered again by the dark blue martyrdom. Everything seemed to be a foregone conclusion, and the results were separated. Chang Duoling stepped back slowly, and regret flashed in his eyes, but the regret in his eyes had not even disappeared. A stream of light suddenly flashed out of the center of the explosion, and he rushed toward his front door and blasted over. That streamer was Jian Wushuang, the wound in his belly was far from healed, and the entire fairy body was shattered. This was the last thing Chang Duoling saw, and his face was hit by the heaviest crit in history. His eyes suddenly went dark, and then turned around. At this moment, Jian Wushuang condensed the 2 ancestral arts of the power world Tianmen and Tianmen Jiu into his fists, and blasted them fiercely. This fist that had gathered all the power of the ancestral arts exploded in Chang Duoling's face. He smashed down with one punch, 1,000 punches in a flash. The power contained in each punch could also cause heavy damage to Yangxian. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to close his hand, a big palm suddenly grabbed his fist, and then squeezed it hard, directly crushing his fist into powder. Damn shit, who allowed you to do this? Chang Duoling roared angrily, and then subconsciously blasted his belly with a punch. But it smashed into the air, because Jian Wushuang's immortal body was completely broken at the moment, and the punch directly passed through his broken immortal body and through into the air. The sword has no double-faced color and is cold, and the only left hand quietly condenses an invisible sword, facing Chang Duoling in front of him, and stabbing his fairy body fiercely. Ding, ding, ding. Invincible, the invisible sword that can sever the universe, breaks every inch at this moment, and then shatters. Chang Duoling was startled at first, and then smiled sullenly. The reaction is really quick, and such an offensive can be completed in this instant. If I am not wearing a 9-day clothing, I am afraid it would be really troublesome. 9 heavens Yixuan? Jian Wushuang's heart was stunned. He wanted to retreat, but he was still a step late. There are nearly 1,000 deep blue leaves swept towards Jian Wushuang, and then burst directly through its fairy body. Pain, an unbearable pain, is like worms gnawing at the heart. Jian Wushuang's dilapidated fairy body was almost shattered under the cutting of these beetle leaves. In the center of the blast, he endured the severe pain of the broken body, and directly squeezed dozens of Zhipin pills into his mouth. Immediately, layers of colorful halos agitated from the blast. All Yangxian watched this scene with bated breath, as if they had forgotten the original intention of coming to the 6th heaven realm. He suppressed the urge to rush to the rescue, frowning, but when he saw the figure appearing alive again, he secretly relieved, and at the same time he was a little confused. What kind of physique is this guy? The immortal body is about to be shattered, so he can live like this. At this moment, Jian Wushuang swallowed dozens of Zhipin pills in one mouthful. His whole body was wrapped in layers of colorful halo, and the immortal body instantly recovered as it was before. He even felt a little hot, and the meridians seemed to be about to burst, and he needed to vent. Seeing this scene, I often make the corners of my eyes twitch. What is this guy who is just a fairy? You must know that his offensives were placed on common Yangxian, who had been bombarded into dregs long ago and died thousands of times. Afterwards, facing Chang Duoling, Jian Wushuang rushed away again, and he reunited the invisible sword, releasing a sword intent that shocked the earth. Unparalleled kendo, the first style of Xingyihu Haijianyi. Star. A sword light rising from the sky, rising against the storm, tearing apart the void, swallowed away with hundreds of thousands of feet. Such a sight made Chang Duoling a little moved. Subconsciously, he no longer regarded Jian Wushuang as an ordinary Evangelion, but as an evenly matched opponent. Facing such a fencing style, his face was solemn, his left arm suddenly raised, and the hundreds of millions of dark blue stars swept away directly. My heavens and stars have changed, even the ordinary Dian Immortal can only evade. I want to see how you break it. Chang Duoling looked ahead meaningfully. Boom. The void was illuminated for an instant. The star-shaped sword intent collided with the heavens and stars in disguise, and the most brilliant scene broke out in. This was their common full blow, which made all the evangelists who watched the battle become disillusioned. They couldn't believe that a Yangxian could actually fight against Dianxian back and forth, or even a big fight. How can that be? If it hadn't been for this scene, all Yangxian would definitely not believe it. Even a great Yangxian in the initial realm is enough to easily obliterate hundreds of Yangxian, which is a crushing existence. But right now, their deep-rooted thoughts are gradually being disintegrated by the figure that dared to compete with Dian Immortal. Damn, what is this guy? Dian impersonating? Looking at the scene ahead, Chang Duoling's eyes were splitting, and he couldn't wait to swallow that figure alive to relieve the depression in his heart. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4881. That kind of sword intent of the galaxy, the lake and the sea, did not easily destroy his heavens and stars, and Jian Wushuang even came to him unscathed. He didn't want to believe that this guy was the realm of Yangxian. Damn it, say. Are you the realm of immortality or die an immortal? Jian Wushuang was hot all over, and his mind was a little dizzy, as if he was a little drunk, but he still held a sword and pointed it at him. Whether I am Yangxian or Dianxian has anything to do with you. This does not prevent me from taking your life next. Chang Duo made an angry smile. Well, what an arrogant mess. Today you will never leave alive. The stars are dead. He was furious, his hands raised. Immediately, patches of nebula light up quietly in the originally broken void. In the colorful nebula, there are countless stars quietly lit up, drawing a big picture of the nebula. As soon as this nebula came out, all the fairy tales changed their colors, and then they all turned and ran without any image. Di Ching waved his hand to release the enchantment, spring and autumn and the others, as well as the tens of thousands of top repairs remaining in the six-day realm. Then, the big picture of the endless nebula in the void began to change color, like a scene of annihilation, and the dotted stars in it began to sink. Jian Wushuang was under the big picture of the nebula with a solemn expression, and then he responded. The selfless real shadow treasure phase condenses, and it soars by billions of meters in an instant, actually directly resisting the big picture of the falling nebula. Then, true shadow of Wu Mei, who had been keeping her eyes closed, quietly opened her eyes, and Huang Shunwei was here. The falling stars extinguished directly when they touched the pale golden divine power, causing the void to vibrate. Jian Wushuang held the sword with one hand. Behind him was the true shadow of Wu Mei, and the front was Nine Heavens' immortal monarch Chang Duoling. For a moment, a chill rose in Chang Duoling's heart. He simply couldn't understand that when he went to destroy the six-day realm, he would be dragged down by an immortal, or even crush. This is simply a matter of great humiliation. If it were to be spread out, it would be absolutely intolerable for him who had slaughtered for 9 days with his own power. Therefore, there is only one solution, and that is to destroy the entire six-heaven realm and that immortal. Chang Duoling's eyes gradually showed a cold, dying breath, and he seemed to have returned to the day when the Nine Heavens' immortal territory was slaughtered on the eve of exile in the Endless Sea. The entire star Nirvana map was blocked by the true shadow of Wu Mei, which bought Jian Wushuang time. Holding an invisible sword, he appeared in front of Chang Duoling in an instant, and cut out with a sword. Chang Duoling didn't dodge or avoid, and straightly met the blade. The 9-day clothing mysterious layer formed by countless dark blue armor leaves on his body is the supreme treasure. The origin is no longer known. It was obtained by traveling through the 10,000 realms in a dilapidated cave when he was young. Even if the Ninth rank Dian Immortal holds the supreme treasure, there is absolutely no possibility of breaking the Nine Heavens Yishuan, and this entire Nine Heavens Yishuan is his true support. And about these 9 days Yishuan also involved a secret. Chang Duoling slaughtered the Nine Heavens' immortal territory because the Lord of the Nine Heavens knew that he had a supreme treasure in his hand, so he fought for it. In his anger, he fought for 9 days, and finally slaughtered the 9-day immortal realm with his own power. When the Nine Heavens' immortal territory was slaughtered, he was wearing such a treasure to offset all the damage caused by the immortal. This shows the mystery of this 9-day clothing mysterious. Immediately afterwards, the invisible sword in Jian Wu's hands broke again without any accident. A fierceness rose in Chang Duoling's eyes, and as he was about to take a shot, there was a sudden tingling in his neck. A sword penetrated and cut his neck directly from the middle, and the blood spurted out. The corners of Jian Wushuang's mouth quietly curled up, and while retreating quickly, his left hand withdrew another invisible sword. Thank you for your previous notification. If there is no previous reminder, I am afraid I would not have thought of cutting your neck. Chang Duoling was almost fainted with anger. He didn't expect that an immortal in this area would actually cause such a heavy injury to him. At the same time, he had lingering fears. If he didn't react in time, his head would be cut off on the spot. Jiutian Yishuan can avoid any heavy damage from the most precious treasure. This is Chang Duoling's pride. He accidentally said it, but he didn't want to be understood by Jian Wushuang, who knew everything. The sword that struck his neck almost caused him a heavy blow. The unbearable anger made him desperate. The stars are dead. The galaxy goes back. The endless fairy styles were released by him when he went crazy. The void that had originally been extinguished once again turned Star River, and Jian Wushuang's Wu Mei true shadow finally couldn't hold on, collapsed and collapsed. Hundreds of millions of stars have come, tearing all the rules of heaven. And there are other celestial domains that are closer to the six-day realm, which has also been affected by this. In an instant, at least a dozen heavens were wiped out. Under the dying of the stars, Jian Wushuang had to release the Yanli barrier to resist hard. The power of Dian Immortal was far beyond what he had imagined. Every dying star fell on him, enough to cause heavy damage to Jian Wushuang. He was struggling to resist, and Chang Duoling's figure appeared before him here. It's a pity that you are such a good seed. If you are not against me today, you will never be able to reach Dian Immortal in the next 5 years, but it is a pity that it will end in my hands. As he said, he stretched out his palm to hold Jian Wushuang's neck tightly. The power of his left hand condensed thousands of layers, and then suddenly slammed into Jian Wushuang's obviously bulging stomach. This punch, even the same realm Dian Immortal could not bear. But Jian Wushuang completely endured it. He looked weird, as if there was something in his throat, and then facing Chang Duoling, he opened his mouth and spit out a colorful rainbow. Chang Duoling was caught off guard, and his face was covered with something Jian Wushuang spit out. Ah. And after vomiting these things, Jian Wushuang seemed to be very comfortable. His legs suddenly slammed frequently, and he swept 1,000 feet away in an instant. Leaving him standing in place, the colorful shadows covering his head and face began to quickly penetrate into every pore. Then a majestic and vast unknown aura spread from Chang Duoling's body. Jian Wushuang, who had been watching this scene from afar, had a bad premonition in his heart. The things he vomited just now had been swallowed too many emperor pin pills before, and could not be absorbed at all for a while, so they accumulated in his belly. Never wanted to be punched out by Chang Duoling with a punch, mixed with the effects of nearly 60 G-pin pills, and spit out all his brain on his head, and then was absorbed inadvertently. With so many medicinal effects, I am afraid that Chang Duoling will be promoted to the 3rd rank. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4882. You know that every supreme pill is the treasure of the Emperor Six Crows. How can the pill that can be treasured by the Emperor have a common product? The energy rules contained in each of them are beyond imagination. Jian Wushuang swallowed nearly 60 pieces in one gulp in desperation. Even if he was an immortal body, he could absorb only 20 medicines. The efficacy of the remaining 40 G-pin pills is completely cheaper. Chang Duoling. Chang Duoling backed away, holding his head full of filth that he thought was actually the medicine dregs of great luck, and roared in shock. Miscellaneous, dare to insult me? As everyone knows, a good fortune has already been added. Layers of colorful ripples surged out from his body, and at the same time, there were hundreds of rainbow peaks across the void, and strands of smoke and dust formed a storm converging. Di Qing, who was watching from a distance, tightened his brows in an instant, and even Chen Qing and others felt a great crisis inexplicably. Promoted to rank 3, Wushuang is probably in danger this time. Di Qing murmured, already in rank 9 he can naturally see the heaven and earth vision that Chang Duoling provokes. The initial realm is promoted to the 3rd rank, the universe has the same force, and the flowing great air luck adds to the body, which is the 3rd rank. He wiped off the scum on his face, and Chang Duoling, who was about to do it, also noticed her own changes, staring at a loss, and then surprised. It seems to be promoted. Jian Wushuang's brows curled together, and he felt the palpitating force fluctuations. In the initial realm of Dian Immortal, and with Chang Duoling of 9 Heavens Yixuan, it is already difficult to get to the extreme. If he is promoted to rank 3, he may have no chance of winning. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang suddenly urged himself, and a galaxy sword light surging out from behind him. Wushuang Kendo, Xingyihu Haijianyi, the 2nd style. River. Compared with the star-shaped sword intent, the river-shaped sword intent is more majestic, capable of breaking through the heavens. Even in the face of 100,000 ancestors, it is enough to crush it, and it is the cornerstone of the entire Wushuang Kendo, but not the sharpest sword style. Chang Duoling, who was retreating quickly and was about to be promoted to rank 3, saw this scene. His face changed slightly. He felt that this sword style was even more unfathomable than before. It is absurd to be able to threaten Dian with the power of Yangxian. Chang Duoling was furious, and with one arm stretched out, a more magnificent galaxy cover suddenly fell. The stars are dead. Countless big sun stars swept again. Jian Wushuang sat on the tide of the billion meters Zhenhe River, his eyes calm to the extreme, as if he did not put the ruined stars above his head in his eyes. Then, under the gaze of all Yangxian, Zhenhe at the head of the tide just waved his hand gently. The waves are surging, the giant river is in the sky, and the endless sword intent rises into the sky, brazenly facing the dying stars. The void suddenly shines, as if there are a million big suns in the sky. Everything is truly extinguished. Jing was naked. Jian Wushuang, who seemed to be coming from heaven, followed Chang Duoling. The Jian River rushed and swallowed everything in an instant. The stars died, and the shattered void returned to silence. Even the Dian immortal aura that Chang Duoling exuded completely disappeared. Only the sky-shattering, magnificent Kendo Tianhe, like a ribbon, straddles the heavens and domains, shattering all direction. This is a pure sword. There is no sword mixed with any great power. All Yangxians swallow their throats involuntarily. This sword is enough to leave the strongest stroke in their divine consciousness, and even in the endless years to come. How can I ask? The heavens and the thousands of domains, countless arrogances are shocking. Who can use this sword? Who can block this sword? This sword is too magnificent, so that it is difficult for Yangxian who diligently practice Yanli Dao to calm down. It turns out that Kendo can still be so reckless, so vertical and horizontal. Every Xianxian present had no longer considered the final outcome of this battle. An immortal, facing a prestigious Dian immortal, not only did not fall behind, but instead used his own path to the fullest. This battle will definitely remember them. The result is not important, but it is quite important. Di Qing stared at the front closely, and his palms under the extravagant clothes clenched into fists unknowingly. Chen Qing, Chun Qiu, Kui Jing, Wei Liujia and others are all eager to rush to fight together. Zhao Ting's gaze was difficult to understand, and most of it was shocked. When the hanging river in the sky dissipated, and billions of sword intents returned to a moment, all the results would emerge. Jian Wushuang held an invisible sword with the tip of the sword pointing diagonally forward. The opposite of him is Chang Duoling, the Nine Heavens immortal monarch. Ding with the sound of voices, the invisible sword in Jian was hands shattered every inch and turned into powder. Almost at the same time, Chang Duo made the exposed fairy body shattered at the same time except for the cover of Zhu Tian Yixuan. Divine blood spurted out, and even the deep blue Nine Heavens Yixuan was densely covered with mottled sword marks. Nine Heavens Yixuan, really amazing. Jian Wushuang murmured softly, a ray of divine blood gushing from the corner of his mouth. Chang Duoling, who looked like a blood man, didn't even have a piece of good flesh on his face, and his only intact eyes were looking at him with a complicated expression. This situation only existed for a few dozen breaths of time, and as the circle of colorful shadows returned to one, Chang Duoling, who was almost about to fall, recovered completely in an instant. The flesh and blood is as before, the immortal body is prosperous, even the vitality of his whole body rhythm is strong to another state. Chang Duoling, promoted to the 3rd rank. I'm really curious, how did you sway Dian Immortal with the power of immortal regeneration? You must know that between the two, there are basically two existences. I can crush any fairy with a wave of my hand, even if he is the most stunning Tianjiao in the universe. When I was promoted to Dian Immortal, I slaughtered 9 immortal realms with my own power. In each immortal realm, there were no less than 50 Yangxian, and a total of more than 400 Yangxian died in my hands. There are countless top repairs. This is the power of Dian Immortal. Chang Duoling recounted the past word by word, looking at Jian Wushuang at Yukanshu. But today, you changed my opinion. If it weren't for me to be promoted to rank 3, I'm afraid that I would have fallen under that sword. You made my heart palpitations. If it weren't for Zhoutian Yixuan, I'm afraid I would be hit hard even if I was rank 3. Just one sentence for you. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang said, say. Are you Yangxian or Dianxian? Xianxian Peak. The world is silent, and often the corners of his eyes beat fiercely. Even if he heard it with his own ears, he couldn't believe it. Looking through the ages, even in the battle of Emperor Zhenwu Yang ascending the emperor, the countless arrogances that emerged have not been legendary cross-border beheading. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4883. Yangxian is Yangxian, and Dianxian is Dianxian. The gap between the two is too vast. Even if the quasi-Dian immortal understands the immortal style, it is almost impossible to fight the Dian immortal. Therefore, Chang Duoling couldn't believe it. The corner of his eyes throbbed, and his eyes were cold. That's a pity. Today I will never let you leave alive. Jian Wushuang's mouth slowly conjured up a sneer. The first time I can threaten you, the second time it is more than just a threat. Chang Duoling sneered equally, and his figure suddenly disappeared into countless plumes of smoke and dust the next moment. Standing on the spot, Jian Wushuang instantly condensed an invisible sword, blocking him. Boom! With a muffled sound, the sword in his hand shattered directly, and his figure retreated 100 feet. Qi and blood surged. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, restraining the blood that was about to gush out. This understatement hit him severely. Chang Duoling, who was promoted to rank 3, was completely different from the previous one. Whether it was the control of Yanli or the use of the immortal style, he rose to another level. He already had the mentality of killing, and his shots were also fierce several times. He stretched out his hand, and a star halberd condensed from the stars fell into his hand. This is the real battle. The endless void was torn apart, and all Yangxians sighed. Xiao Dejuan also woke up leisurely, unable to condense the fairy source, but survived by this. Instead of pale, his face was covered with sickly blush. Supported by the thin purple robe, he watched the battle intently. This is an extremely unequal realm, but it has fallen into a fierce battle. Chang Duoling held a halberd with flowing stars, and with every attack, Jian Wushuang kept retreating. Originally, I regarded Jian Xiu as a joke, and the number of Jian Xiu cultivators who died in my hands is definitely no less than 50. They are nothing more than mobs, but now you have changed my opinion. If you are alive, you will definitely be able to ascend to the Sword Immortal, or start a sect, or take charge of 100 heavens. It is all easy. But if you are alive, I will not be able to return to life, and I will never allow it. Chang Duoling's voice was cold and his eyes were sharp. So, you must die in my hands. After he finished speaking these last words, the star halberd in his hand suddenly slashed down, as if he was crushing down with the endless stars. The invisible long sword shattered at the sound. Jian Wushuang's chest was torn, and a long and narrow bloodstain appeared. Then Chang Duo made the star halberd in his hand suddenly deformed, turning it into a soft whip, and directly bound him. Goodbye. He smiled weirdly, with his palms pointed like a knife, carrying endless power, and directly cut off Jian Wushuang's right arm with one palm. Divine blood spilled into the void. Not good. With a startled cry, Chun Qiu was about to rush forward, but was stopped by Di Qing. Diqing looked at him and said in a condensed voice, even Jian Wushuang can't handle it. Even if you are all on it, it's just a dead end. Chun Qiu understands naturally, but if he doesn't save Jian Wushuang, he will be wiped out. Thinking of this, he seemed to have caught the last straw, and looked towards De Qingdao. Here, only you can save Brother Jian. As the 9 ranks Dian Immortal, Diqing is in the absolute realm. He has grown to the 9 ranks realm since ancient times. He has reached the highest level of growth strength, and can naturally be easily crushed but just promoted to the 3rd rank. Chang Duoling. But all of this must be established before he lost his life. He has lost his 2 true lives, and the battle with Chang Fu has made him weak so far, but even so, he can still save Jian Wushuang from Chang Duoling's hands. It's just that he doesn't plan to save Jian Wushuang now. He can feel that Jian Wushuang needs such a battle that is not equal at all. I will shoot when necessary, but not now. Diqing said, I have a hunch that this will never be his limit. But Chun Chiu still didn't say anything in the end, looking solemnly at the void. At this moment, the void seemed to be soaked with blood, and Jian Wushuang was tortured. Every inch of his fairy body was crushed into powder by Chang Duoling mercilessly. Let me guess where your Xianyuan is, heart? Head? Chang Duoling sneered. The immortal body where he passed by his palm became a powder. Jian Wushuang could not move, he could only let him disassemble the fairy body. The pain of bone and heartbreak made his temples sweat like syrup, but even so, he didn't say a word, and looked at Chang Duoling coldly. Chang Duo makes him look at him and feels even more embarrassed. He dislikes this extremely calm gaze. He is already a dying person, and being so calm is simply against common sense. This look seemed to be with disdain and contempt, which made him rejuvenate his killing intent, and directly blasted out Jian Wushuang's belly with a punch. It is unfortunate that you met me. If there is reincarnation, remember to converge. Chang Duoling said coldly, raising his arm, and the back cover came down. Thousands of stars died at the same time, and the general momentum emanating directly shattered Jian Wushuang's entire fairy body. The stream of light faded away, and finally escaped completely in the air. Seeing this scene, Yang Xiandu had heart palpitations, and such an unequal battle finally ended. After that, Diching appeared to Chang Duoling. With an extremely pale complexion, he was still a step late. Damn chop, do you know the consequences? Di Ching was furious, and 10 wings suddenly appeared behind him, revealing his unconcealed realm of strength. Rank 9 Dian immortal. The endless coercion, like the 10,000 heavens falling down, the chill from the bottom of his heart made Chang Duo shocked. He knows very clearly what this level of coercion represents, that is an existence even more terrifying than him. At this moment, Di Ching was completely furious. Regardless of the damage to his life, he slapped Chang Duoling with a palm. Although it has been prepared for a long time, Yu read www.yukanshu. However, facing such a blow, Chang Duoling was directly taken hundreds of feet away. Miscellaneous, prepare to die. Di Ching walked forward slowly, the power of his body seemed to be burning, and the 10 wings behind him were beating in rhythm, exuding a powerful force. In the golden cage on the hibiscus tree in North Changxianzhou, he slept for an unknown number of years. It seemed that he had not yet come out of the ancient battle. Until the anxious face appeared in his eyes, the kid with a certain purpose seemed to have a path in front of him. Entering the Sand Devil's cave, trespassing into the old heaven, and going to the great sky, everything brings him a different feeling. And he was also unknowingly willing to do things he shouldn't care about. Perhaps it had been silent for too long, and the endless years were too long, which made him change some attention. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.